This week on Quality Digest Live, how social learning affects Six Sigma projects.
Plus, learning to love what you do. That and more when we come back.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for October 30th, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. Well, if you're a mechanical engineer, and there's a fair number of you, I think, in our audience, we can say, well, here's something that should be of interest as well as of some use. Bill Tandler, who's the CEO of Multimetrics Incorporated, is a longtime QD contributor, and he's an absolute authority on the topic of geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, better known as GD&T. This is the symbolic language for specifying and communicating permissible limits of imperfection for machine part features, which helps guarantee the proper assembly and operation of those parts. Recently, Bill undertook a major effort in updating a GD&T glossary that we first published back in 2008. The information contained within that article was based on the 1994 version of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers Y14.5 standard. The new glossary, which was published yesterday in Quality Digest Daily and was titled Clarifying GD&T, looks at the key GD&T terminology, but using the framework of the 2009 version of ASME Y14.5. So Bill wrote that a few years back based on the older version of the standard. Well, the standard's changed since then. We had to update it. Okay. And there was some, I was actually surprised, there was some fairly significant changes in the terminology in the glossary back then to the one that we just published.
So and this is glossary?
This is a glossary. It's a glossary listing of terms. It's about 40 terms that define really GD&T and what GD&T is all about. So it's a really good read. And you can read the article containing the glossary in the story links that's right below the video player screen right down there. And you know, when you're looking over the article, I would recommend that you click over and click through to the streaming video training series on this very topic, which was created by Bill and our own training division, 360 Performance Circle. The series Smart G&T, an Advanced Beginner's Guide, provides everything you'd ever want to know about GD&T. So go ahead and check that out. Again, you can read the article below the player page. There's a couple of links in that. Back to that, you can check out a free preview of the training. It's about an hour or two, I think maybe 2 or 3 hours of training on there, and really good stuff if you're interested.
Yeah, and I've seen Bill do training. Mm-hmm. He is very articulate and very good at explaining things.
Very
he's very precise and actually also really interesting. He's got a kind of a subtle sense of humor that he kind of works in on everything as well. So it's worth it. If you need to learn GD&T, it's a good series to take a leg at. Bill's a good trainer. So.
Absolutely, good stuff there.
All right. Autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, and they've really captured our imagination, right? But there are still a lot of hurdles before we start seeing fleets of autonomous cars on our city streets. And one of those hurdles, according to Frost & Sullivan, is insurance. Specifically, who's going to pay for it?
Big issue.
If you think about it, the current system of calculating motor insurance premiums places importance on driver-related factors, things such as your age, your gender, your driving record, and actually very often even where you live. Do you live and drive in an area where you might be more prone to accidents than others? However, the introduction of autonomous vehicles has turned the spotlight on vehicle-related parameters. New analysis from Frost and Sullivan in the report Impact of Automated Vehicles on Motor Insurance Market finds that vehicle insurers will move away from the driver-centric strategy to follow one or a combination of 3 models as automated vehicles become more common. And these 3 models are going to be product-centric evaluation, brand-centric evaluation, and system-centric evaluation. By that we mean that they're going to be looking at those 3 items or a combination of those 3 items as opposed to looking specifically at the driver, which kind of makes sense because autonomous car, you're not the driver. So according to Frost & Sullivan, automotive and transportation senior research analyst Kamalesh Mohan Arangam, along with higher product liability, the responsibility of insuring the vehicle will shift from vehicle owners the vehicle manufacturers. And here's where it gets kind of interesting. As most of us know, premiums are set by historical data based on make and model over time, geographic area over time, the driver over time. That historical data, and looking at this historical data, will most likely shift, says Frost and Sullivan. The new breed of insurance underwriters, rather than looking at historical data, will have to evaluate the actual driving algorithms and assign a relevant risk priority number. In other words, how good or safe is a particular algorithm, the software that drives the car. That's what Frost and Sullivan say. I kind of disagree that the underwriters will need that level of understanding, the programmatic level. I don't believe they are going to be digging into the actual software and decoding it and looking how different brands handle different things. However, they will need to look beyond historical driver data. They will, I think, use some historical data to look at brand or product response to different situations. That is, what kind of accidents are these cars involved in, which is really kind of an indirect look at how good the algorithms are. So the way I envision this is that in terms of historical data, insurers are going to, compare, a Toyota to a Honda to a Subaru, and does there seem to be a trend in the types of accidents one car gets into as opposed to another? Because that would be an indication how good their avoidance systems and their software is in terms of avoiding adverse situations. So I think there is some historical data that'll have to be looked at. By the way, autonomous cars also, and the increased digitalization of cars, will also change maybe some of the different premiums that you might pay. For instance, you might want to pay for cyber insurance as an add-on to your car's insurance, because you might want to insure in case your car gets hacked. I mean, it sounds funny to say it right now, but we're already looking at hacking insurance for companies. Companies can buy insurance in case their software systems at work, their corporate software systems gets hacked. There's a very possibility that you may be able to buy hacking insurance for your car. So the study, which is called Impact of Automated Vehicles on Motor Insurance Market, is a strategic insight report that is part of the Automotive and Transportation Growth Partnership Service Program. This research analyzes and forecasts the risks and opportunities for the motor insurance industry due to the advent of autonomous vehicles. This study also provides a strategic overview of motor insurance industry and the OEM involvement in this space as well. It highlights the challenges that participants must overcome, concluding with expectations on the future of the industry. If you're interested in the study, you can find it by following the link contained in the story, which you can get to by following the link below the player page.
That's right.
So go there and then go there.
Right down there, as always. What's interesting to me about this is I thought about this is like, well, will the information about those rates, those premiums, be released to the public? So will the public know that, for instance, a certain algorithm, certain brand, it does have a tendency to crash a little bit more. Will people say, well, I'm not going to buy that one?
That's interesting. If Ford is paying a higher rate for premiums than Toyota, maybe there's some reason for that. Yeah,
will that be proprietary? Will that be protected? Will there be an agreement with the insurance companies that will not be released? I mean, do we as consumers have the right to know?
That's interesting.
I mean, there's a lot.
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
There's a lot of issues here around this whole issue of autonomous driving, which is, I think you can fairly say it's inevitable at this point. It's going to be autonomous.
Oh yeah,
there already is.
There already tested.
Yeah, it already is. So I mean, there's going to be autonomous vehicles on the highways and byways of this country and the world real soon.
Real soon, yeah.
Within probably a decade, if not less.
Well, certainly within cities. Yeah, taxis and self-driving taxis.
And I mean, people need to know this stuff, right? So interesting. Funny. Interesting stuff. All right, thanks, Derek. Okay, well, our next article is entitled "Social Learning Applied to Six Sigma Projects." It was written by a pair of trainers, George Chemers and Patricia Cronin, and appeared in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can see it right there. Social Learning Applied to Six Sigma Projects. Well, interesting. The premise here is one that I think a lot of us can relate to, that different people learn in different ways. And to lead teams effectively, a leader, someone who is leading those teams, needs to be aware of this, the way people learn differently, and they need to proceed accordingly in training and having information disseminated to their teams that they can use. Well, now, in this article, of course, what jumps right out at you, first of all, is the title of Six Sigma. I mean, we have a lot of people in our audience that are proponents of Six Sigma. We have some people who are detractors of Six Sigma. And so right away when you see Six Sigma in the title, people are going to jump on that a little bit and say, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, or it's great, or whatever. Well, I want to point out that to me, as I read through this article a few times and thought about it, and knowing that Chemers and Cronin are black belts and Six Sigma trainers, and they do use the DMAIC methodology, with that, I think that what I found was that their insights, what they're talking about here, are applicable to any team, any company, any organization.
Sure, it's training.
It's training.
Yeah.
If you have to lead, if you have to educate people, if you want people to do what you want them to do and you want them to learn on the job, I mean, what they're talking about here is really, really relevant, regardless of what the particular type of team is. So where they start here is with the work of a researcher by the name of David Kolb, who in the 1970s developed something called the Learning Style Inventory, LSI, and he developed that again in the 1970s. Kolb, within that, identified 4 stages of learning. I want to show them to you here on a slide because I think it's interesting to look at these. The first one is concrete experience, which is being involved in a new experience and learning from it. Second one is a reflective observance, so watching others and seeing how they do things and learning from that. Then there's abstract conceptualization. You take that experience, you take those observations, and you begin to put them into some context and understand what they mean. And then fourth and finally, you have active experimentation, which is you develop theories from all that, and then you begin to solve problems based on what you've learned. And it makes a lot of sense to look at that way. That's the way most people would tend to learn, right? Well, if you think about it again, these map back pretty well actually to DMAIC. Again, I don't want to make this too much about Six Sigma, and DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control is often associated with Six Sigma, but really, that's just a good methodology for improving anything, right? I mean, it makes total sense. I mean, from the days of Sheward and Deming on upward, I mean, they didn't call it DMAIC, but that idea, that process, PDCA, whatever it may be, makes a lot of sense for any kind of improvement. So what the authors of this piece looked at was they said, okay, well, thinking about DMAIC as a methodology and looking at those ways people learn, they really map back really well. I mean, the define phase of this is really about conceptualization, right? So the conceptualized phase of learning really ties back to define. Measure and analyze, the M and the A in DMAIC, really ties back to the experimentation phase that they're talking about. Then improve is all about experience, and control is about the observation. They kind of flip the DMAIC on its side a little bit to make it align better, but the process, the steps that flow around and circle back around, map back really well with the way that people learn, and I think that's really important. And there's another layer to this. There's 4 kinds of learners as well that the authors talk about in this piece. The first are converging learners, those that evaluate plans and they focus efforts accordingly. There's accommodating learners who like to work through trial and error. There's diverging learners, and those are ones that recognize and investigate problems and proceed accordingly. And finally, there's assimilating learners, and they define problems very clearly and establish criteria for how those problems map out. Different kinds of people, different kinds of learners, and when you know that, I think you can begin to understand, again, the way people learn, why people learn, and you can begin to leverage that. Now, if you're a leader of a team, right, and you have a project, and that you need to accomplish, right? You've been given a goal, you've been given a job to do. There's a lot of ways you can do that. You can do that by simply hammering out what you know is the right way to do it, the way you learn maybe, or the way that you're comfortable with learning. Or you can, through some of these tactics that the authors are talking about here, through Kolb's tactics of LSI, you can look at your teams and you can figure out what kind of learners they are. You can figure out what they like to do and how that maps back to, say, the DMAIC process. And you can begin to then communicate better, you can identify problems better, you can solve problems better. You can do a lot of things better when you understand and you adapt as a leader to the way that people learn. Now, this isn't the Wild West here. I mean, everybody doesn't just do their own thing. I mean, you have to align it with the project needs and what as a leader, what you need to accomplish. But when you understand what people's natural tendencies are in terms of how they learn, then you can begin to also divvy out some portions of the project that maybe better match up with what people do. And that makes things much more effective. And there's a couple of good examples they use in the article, which I'm going to recommend that you all read, where they talk about specific projects that they worked on either Cronin or Chambers, worked on over their lengthy careers, and things that they did to use this, and how they had different projects and case studies, and how understanding how members of the team learned helped them better leverage those abilities of those people and get better results from the projects. Really interesting that you can do it that way. And again, it's really analogous to almost like a lean process of getting those ideas from the bottom up rather than the top down.
Yeah, well, the idea of matching learning to the learner is something that's really popular in education. It certainly makes a lot of sense to do it within the corporate world as well.
Well, sure. I mean, especially when you're project managing. I mean, if you have a small team, and what they're talking about here are relatively small teams of half a dozen or less people in some cases. You know, if you don't do it that way, people are going to check out, and you're going to have abilities and skills that can help you in accomplishing your goals that you're not going to be able to leverage. So that's what they're talking about here, is making sure that you get everything you can out of your teams, and you succeed by matching your process to how people learn. Good, really good stuff. Good stuff there. I like that. That's the kind of article that I like because it's practical and it has applications across the board. Everywhere.
Okay. Yeah. Well, an article I like because it deals with feelings. It's touchy feelings.
Actually, yours is very practical across the board.
It actually is practical as well. It was a pretty thought-provoking column by David Schwinn this week. At least I thought it was thought-provoking. And the column was Doing What You Love and Loving What You Do. And it examined those two concepts, doing what you love versus loving what you do. The first one, doing what you love, most of us have heard of and or considered. Just listen to Oprah or Joseph Campbell or Steve Jobs for that matter, and you will be exposed to the idea that we need to discover what gives us joy and pursue that as our job or career. The idea being, from Jobs' perspective, certainly, Steve Jobs' perspective, that if you are doing what you love, you will not only enjoy your job, but you're going to be better at it. And some would even extend that idea to say that would also lead to the betterment of society as a whole. Now, there are those, and Schwinn points them out, who see this as narcissistic. Schwinn quotes from author Miya Tokumitsu, who says that doing what you love facilitates willful ignorance of working conditions of others and one's own self by encouraging continuous self-gratification. She goes on to say it exposes its adherents to exploitation, justifying unpaid or underpaid work by throwing workers' motivations back at them. When passion becomes the socially accepted motivation for working, talk of wages or reasonable scheduling becomes crass. I actually personally think that is a bit of an overstatement at best, and most likely a straw man argument, because she's kind of assuming that people who are pursuing what they love are also complete idiots, which in my experience is not usually the case. But I like the way that Schwinn turns this around and posits that since we can't always necessarily do what we love, there's a lot of practical reasons for that, that we at least can love what we do. And he and his wife take that approach in their book, The Transformative Workplace, Growing People, Purpose, Prosperity, and Peace. In that book, Schwinn and his wife Carol write that they make the case for creating work that transforms us as we transform it, where we can grow lives of purpose and passion, where all people may prosper, and where we can contribute to a better and more peaceful world. Okay, yeah, that all sounds all fluffy kittens and rainbows. I know, but think about it. Often it isn't the job or the work itself that is drudgery. It is our approach to it. If our mindset, and the mindset of our employers, is that we find something within that job, or are enabled to find something within that job, the job that we have to do to make a living, we've got to pay the bills. If we find something within that job that we find valuable to ourselves, or where we understand the value that it provides others, we can transform that job from drudgery to something that is fun or interesting or energizing. Fill in the blank with something positive. A lot of your work in quality as inspectors or quality managers or compliance people, I know a lot of you guys, and having talked to a lot of you, I know that many of you have a passion for your job because it directly affects how good a product is or how well a process runs, which in turn can put a smile on a customer's face. And you understand that, and so that gives you some joy in your job finding defects. And it's not just the customers. I have seen, for instance, lean consultant Mike Mickelwright. I've seen Mike Mickelwright at work, and I have seen the literal joy he takes in showing employees easier ways to do their job or to make their workspace more efficient or what have you. He enjoys doing that because he understands the ramifications of it. So, are you doing what you love? Well, maybe not. But you have found a way to love what you do because you understand the value of it. And on this idea, David Schwinn has a quote from Khalil Gibran from his poem On Work. And Gibran writes this, "And what is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house." And what Gibran is saying is you do your work understanding where it's going. Not just the work itself, but what is the ramifications of that work. And if you do that and you understand what it's doing, you can sometimes find purpose in it. But this is a big but. Pursuing doing what you love is a lot like pursuing loving what you do. It takes work. You have to actively look for the value in your work. It's not just going to come to you. You have to think about it. That might mean, can I do it better, faster, leaner? A lot of people take joy in problem solving. Or can I take the skill that I am learning with this job and expand on it so that I can move into a position that maybe more fully fits my desires? And not to take the burden off your boss, he or she has to allow you to find value in your work. What does that mean? It might mean being open to ideas about altering the workplace, altering the work itself, as long as it still meets requirements, of course. Introducing variety into the work, employing ideas, listening. It means recognizing that your employee might have the skills and enjoy working in a different position, doing a different job. You have to be open to that. You have to allow your employees to find what it takes to find joy in the work, and this all takes work. But at the end of the day, let's be honest, sometimes you and your job are not a match. That is when you have to ask yourself, should I even be here? If you shouldn't be there, you should be looking for an exit strategy. Sure, easy to say, right? Sometimes you just have no choice. You have the job you have and you don't have any other options, and yeah, that sucks. But if there is any path out, you should be looking at. Maybe it's more school, maybe it's moving, whatever. You should consider it because staying at a job you hate does no one any good, least of all you. Schwinn ends by quoting the flip side of Khalil Gibran's poem, where Khalil Gibran says this, "For if you bake bread with indifference, you bake a bitter bread that feeds but half man's hunger. And if you grudge the crushing of the grapes, your grudge distills a poison in the wine. And if you sing, though as angels, and love not the singing, you muffle man's ears to the voices of the day and the voices of the night." Good stuff.
Good stuff. Khalil Gibran always.
If you've never read Khalil Gibran, you got to check him out. He's good.
And David Schwinn's very wise as well. I think that his book, we've been covering it a lot, and he's been talking about it a lot in his columns. Good stuff, and he has a lot of practical advice there, as we mentioned at the top, for how to enjoy your work better. So. Thank you, David Schwinn. Thank you, Dirk. All right. Well, we're going to turn now, at the end of the show here, to our CMSE Corner segment. This is in which we bring in a guest from the Coordinate Metrology Society. The group, the CMS, of course, is our go-to partner for portable 3D measurement hardware, software, and peripherals. In their annual event, the Coordinate Metrology Society's conference occurs each summer. CMSC 2016 will occur just outside of the great town of Nashville, Tennessee, next July. And as always, Dirk and I are going to be right there on hand. CMSA Corner is our way to stay on top of events at the Coordinate Metrology Society on a regular basis. In this month's segment, we'll be talking with Randy Groover of the Bowling Company, who also happens to be the chair of the CMSC's Certification Committee. As such, he's played an important role in developing the Society's Level 1 and Level 2 certifications for operators of portable coordinate metrology systems like articulated arms. So, to chat with us now about the latest happenings within the CMSC's certification program, we're very pleased to be joined by Randy Groover. Randy, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Dirk.
Hey,
glad to be here. Got some great progress we've made over the last year, so I'm anxious to talk about that and share with the folks online some of our activities.
Yeah, well, let's get right into it. So let me ask you this. The Level 1 certification requires proctored exams, which are now being offered in various locations. How has the response been to these on-site opportunities from the user group?
So the response has been limited. I would say thus far, but it's beginning to gain momentum. I think that next week we've got a delivery scheduled on the East Coast, and may have some folks on the West Coast taking advantage of that delivery option as well. So it's starting to gain momentum.
Hey, Randy, you guys have I believe you just published a new certification handbook in print and in online as well, right? In a PDF. What will those who are looking to sit for the exam get from this handbook?
Well, I hope they'll get some clarity as to the process regarding application. So some of the feedback we've had over the last 3 years that the certification, the level one's been available, has been that it's a little difficult to navigate the application process. So the handbook really defines and outlines the steps very clearly, as well as any fees or costs, options for delivery like the authorized proctor sites. And hopefully it'll make that navigation a more palatable process for folks. And I'll share that here. Quite proud of it. I know a lot of folks contributed to this. This is a bound copy that I've been handing out quite a bit at my work. And it's available on the CMS website as well. So if you click on About CMS at the top of the site and then scroll down to the certification link on the left, you'll see that this handbook will be one of your selections on the right.
And that basically just steps you through the process, is that right?
It does step you through the process, and it also contains a lot of information. Some of the activity that led up to the creation of the certification with regards to studies that we performed and data that we collected. Some of the measurement studies that we host each year at CMSC now, and how there's a link and how the certification is integrated with some of the outcomes from some of the measurement zone activities over past years. So it really is more than just here are the things you do to get through the process, quite a bit of context to it and history, and all important, the 5 job duty areas that the level 1 assessment measures.
Okay.
And references as well. I mean, there's an importance to getting an early start in this process because you need some references. There's information in that handbook that you really need to have access to.
Yeah, there really is. One of the challenges that folks have experienced that have applied or been navigating the application process is the lag time with references returning their information to us for review. So a fundamental tenet of the certification is a peer review, and it is incumbent upon applicants to provide 4 references, and the references then are contacted by the applicant, and then they respond directly back to ASPRS, American Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing. They're our partner and administrative arm for processing applicants. So the applicant really doesn't have knowledge of the reference process and to whether or not 2 or 3 or none of those folks that they stood up as a reference have responded back to ASPRS. So there's an awful lot of communication that needs to occur so folks understand this can take some time, anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months for references to reply back to ASPRS, and then for the CMS committee to perform a peer review based on the feedback from those references. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the critical path.
Gotcha. Well, I know this has been a multi-year process for the Coordinate Metrology Society to get to this point with the program. So how has user feedback shaped this effort during that time, and how does it continue to inform what you're doing now?
User feedback is what initiated the process, and I think the handbook is evidence of our response to user feedback with regards to the application process being kind of cumbersome. So we're hoping that will mitigate that risk that we have feedback. Another important element with the feedback, again, that we initially identified through survey with membership was that the level 2 hands-on practical assessment, and that piece is available for the PCMMs. This past year was the second year where we've hosted that at the conference, and this year the laser tracker hands-on performance test, we piloted it in Florida in 2015. In 2016 it will be available as a certification level 2. So the feedback from audience and membership originally was they needed a hands-on performance piece as well as just a cognitive general knowledge element. So that's the level 1, the level 2.
Well, Randy, thank you for giving us that update. As you say, a lot has been happening over the past couple of months with the certification process. We'll be certainly having you back on the show, back on CMS Corner, in an upcoming episode to bring us up to speed on further development. So, Randy Groover, thanks for joining us. And I should mention, by the way, www.cmsc.org. That's a website that Randy referenced before that you want to go out and download the handbook from. So, Randy, again, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, this from Time Magazine. An Australian fast food chicken franchise called Chicken Treat says it has solicited a hen named Betty to run its Twitter account by placing a computer in her coop. For the last few weeks, the company's tweets have been mostly nonsensical strings of characters typed by Betty as she pecks or walks over the keyboard. The company will continue this exercise until Betty successfully tweets a 5-letter word in English, which will apparently place her in the Guinness Book of World Records. She seems to be making progress. A couple weeks ago, she typed bum. So this week's tweet of the week comes from Betty. Some words of inspiration from Betty. You can see down there. That's one smart chicken.
I predict that the 5-letter word that she will type will be wings.
Wings. Free me.
Wings or nugget. Well, nugget actually has 6, but nugget with 1 G.
Wings. Wings would be good.
Wings. Well, we'll see. Thank you, Betty, for doing that. I know you're working hard on that. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Randy Groover, for being here today on CMS Corner as well. Another great episode here of QDL. We'll be back at you with another week of QDD starting on Monday, and of course, we'll be back here next week with Quality Digest Live again.
Have a spooky Halloween.
That's right. Have a great Halloween. Good luck, Mets. Come back and win that series. I didn't wish them luck last week, and look what happened. So hopefully they're gonna win this week. So
last year. Okay.
So you all have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
So
bye.